So now I like to open up this space for anyone in this room, and especially those who are the grantees of these Advancing Equity grants.
One thing that comes to mind for me, and I work with the Transition to Teaching program in Eastern, is something that the state level with the block grants that we've gotten, that has helped advance, the equity for candidates that normally wouldn't even look at doing the program. But the support from the state with the funds to help that candidate, a lot of them they're the first to graduate high school. Maybe they're the first in their family to go to college, and the thought of spending money even for college seems like a huge amount for them, even though they don't have somebody that's previously been in college to help them understand that that's the cost of going to college. But many of them, they are the sole support for their family. There's different cultural aspects that make that challenge hard, and the grants help eliminate part of that barrier. I hope coming from that perspective kind of gives you a help there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is very helpful. Thank you, Jenny, for sharing.
I think one thing I think a lot about is building shared language and shared practices across the state, where I think we might use the same words, and we can make a long list of them, right? Equity, justice, inclusion, and mean very different things. And one of the things that I'm happy to see is that the cultural responsive teaching standards or cultural competency standards are going to be relooked at.
And so doing the self-work to figure out what can we do, what's within reach, where can we make an impact, and what are our partners saying is important to them, so we can all be working together. I think those are big takeaways for us to just get going. We've heard enough of the talk, and we have to actually start moving here. And so that's been exciting. But I think the most important piece of this grant process has been the community that has developed with other grantees and the PESB group here supporting the work. That has been really beneficial to us in terms of hearing ideas, listening to strategies, because if we're not doing that particular work right now, we can be in the future. And just being a part of the conversation is helping us to grow as a program. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
I kind of agree with what she said. Don't be afraid to grow as you go. When we first started out our alternative route that first year, we made a few mistakes, but we have improved continuously every year, and listened to the candidates that are in the program, to our partner districts. We've always looked for feedback and growth and to improve, and it gets better every year. And I think across the state, if we could have standard definitions and everything very clear, that would really help everybody be in line with what your focus really is, or what our focus should be.
Thank you, Janet. So we talked about collaboration, we talked about community, and we also talked about growth in this session as well. I'm curious if there are any other people who want to share their takeaways of this session.
An observation I would share, a takeaway I would share, is the way you structured us to think about what's happening at the micro level and the macro level, which just makes me think that we need to constantly be operating at multiple levels. And I'm thinking about the keynote address, thinking about what is internalized in us as individuals, what's happening in interpersonal relations, what's happening in our institution, what's happening at a bigger level, and that we do our work like at the local level, thinking about what does that mean for connecting to what's happening. So it's just making me think of all the different layers of the work, which is a good thing because that means there's a lot of sites and entry points for the work too.
Right. I think that was our intention as well. We wanted to make these changes at the multiple levels. And also, I think that's what we can do at the state level as well.
I love what you just said about allowing many entry points into the work by framing it at multiple levels.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that I was thinking about during the keynote, and that I think about when we have our meetings together, is we sometimes have to resist having spent 10 years, maybe, I don't even know anymore, 10 years in higher ed, like having to really resist being competitive, right? Like, because the kind of currency of higher education is to like get published, be first author, to be the first to get your idea out there, and to kind of like brand it and make it your own. And there, like, in some ways, the local level is exactly where that should happen, but that can't be all we do. So how do we take like the key pieces of learning, not the things that we want to market or sell, but the things that like everyone needs to know this. Everyone needs to know what is so important for educating other people's children, and having a space that is free. The exchange is free. The expectation is that you will give ideas and receive ideas, because what we're doing is too complex to be selfish about it, right? But often a lot of the way we operate in schools, like, is to be competitive and to want to be the person that's number one and on top. And if we don't create spaces that resist that, then we'll continue this hierarchy where some of our students continue to lose because they don't happen to be tapped in enough to the people who have the knowledge and the power. And what I find is that, and this is just from a purely philosophical approach, what I find is that people actually are relieved to not have to do that. Like, when they realize, I really don't have to compete and be so guarded, right? There is a comfort in being able to take a risk and to not share a thought that's fully formed, knowing that your colleague could pick it up and continue to develop it for you, and it's okay, right? So that's there is a vulnerability in our humanity that does not get cared for if you're not working with other people. And I think that just makes the work better too, right? So you all of a sudden your work is better, you're performing better, you're producing more candidates, more children are learning, right? So the thing that feels like the wrong move is the move you need to get all the success that you aspired to have in the first place. So I'm just really grateful for our grantees being willing to participate, right? And to be colleagues with us.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep, I exactly feel the same way. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Kate just made a comment in the chat box saying that very true, Erica. I think educators are some of the most competitive people out there, but we end up competing with ourselves rather than with each other. Right. And just for FYI, Meg included the link to the AEG webpage in the chat box. So if you want to learn more about the Advancing Equity Grants, we have resources and information on our webpage. Feel free to visit our webpage. And now I'd like to turn it back to Erica.
Yes, so our current grantees, like we invited you in today just as a low stakes, easy to enter conversation. Just tell us what you're thinking. You don't need to prepare anything this year. Like, we've only been together for a few months. And then in a year, because one of our mechanisms for advancing equity at the macro level is to host these statewide convenings where people are sharing their learning. And so we want to make this an annual event where we're doing so. So next year we'd ask, instead of us talking about advancing equity grants, next year there will be the grantees will share in partnerships or small groups what they're doing. And then again, low key, not requiring a lot of preparation, but just like, this is where we are right now, what we're learning, and maybe tell us what you think about where we're going, right? So just low key. And then in 2023, at the conclusion of the grant cycle, then each of the programs would have kind of a full hour to give us the history of their project and what their outcomes were like. Because we do sometimes, I mean, obviously you get significant learning when you can say, this is my project, this is what the beginning, middle, end was like, and these are my outcomes. But what we're finding is that learning in progress can be just as powerful. And so we're going to create the platform again next spring for grantees to be able to kind of lead their own sessions as we move forward. And then eventually it will cascade and continue to take a life of its own and demonstrate even greater ways that we're impacting the state. So stay tuned for that. That will be on the horizon. And so we are 4 minutes early. That is the conclusion of our session.